He was a critic of the Syrian authorities long before it was safe to do that, spending 14 years in prison for his political activism. Dr. Abdulaziz al-Khair, a prominent member of Syria's domestic position, is joining us now on RT. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you for receiving me.
Syrian opposition has so many faces at this moment. There are bearded men with Kalashnikovs. There are some people who are trying to direct the uprising from abroad. You represent grassroots opposition. Do you think that your long-time goals for this country, the future that you envisage, is actually being served by the ongoing clashes?
Well, it's a very important and clever question. Thank you for that. No, it's not easy now to decide that what we've struggled for a long time to achieve in Syria is within hand reach nowadays, because too many complications happened in the uprising of Syria. It's been now 17 months. The uprising started peacefully for really democratic goals, freedom and dignity and democracy. But then there was a curve in the events because the regime decided to treat the whole situation only by military means, thus forcing Syrians to hold arms to defend themselves at the beginning. And then there was a chance, really an important chance for extremists in the opposition to enlarge their forces and to gain support from some regional states and maybe global as well, international I mean. And that's where the things started to get worse and worse. But we still stick to hope because we have to, and we are still fighting to gain a peaceful political process in order to preserve the Syrian people aims from their uprising.
Do you have any specific idea how we can start, or you can start, this political process? Because everybody is talking about a reconciliation, but nobody knows how to carry this out.
We are trying to sort out any kind of understanding, any kind of agreement on the international scale to convince all the political parties involved, including the Americans, the Russians, the Chinese, the Europeans, Turks, Iranians, and Gulf states, that now it's a situation that everybody is losing. And the result of the situation, if it goes on, will be a lose-lose situation. No one will benefit from that. That's why everybody must cooperate to convince the military groups, first of all, the regime, second, the armed groups of the opposition, that it's time, it's high time indeed, to come to a ceasefire and to start negotiations about what to do and how to arrange some peaceful future for the country. Of course, this includes the president and his family must step aside, at least for a while, and the power must be passed on to some acceptable personnel from the regime, acceptable to the regime and acceptable to the opposition as well, to start a transitional period in which some new constitution and some new legality will be established in the country.
Now, if those transparent elections that you're envisaging would result in the current President Assad getting the majority of votes, would that be acceptable to you? And I guess most importantly, would that be acceptable to the world?
Once any person accepts the principle of voting, and the voting is really legal and transparent, everyone must accept the results, the outcome of the elections.
You spent 14 years in prison, and definitely you have an extra grind with the Assad family. Why are you not among those who are carrying arms at this point? Why are you not fighting him?
Because, first of all, I've been studying and practicing politics for decades, and I came to the conclusion, which is the only logical conclusion, that arms will lead to the destruction of the country and not to democracy. That's why. It's harmful way, it's useless, and it will support the extremists on both sides. That's why, from the very beginning, it was very clear for me and for others that peaceful struggle is the only way towards a democratic future of the country.
You know, in Western eyes, the homegrown civil opposition and armed groups are perceived as allies. Given what you just said, why haven't you or groups who support you been more vocal in trying to distance themselves from using terror for achieving political goals?
Among the armed opposition, you have different political goals and different political attitudes. I believe many groups through the armed opposition declared, and they will be in favor of a political process on certain terms and conditions, of course, while others will not respond to that. We have some Salafists, some Islamic extremists who have their own agendas. So, among the civil and peaceful opposition, there are really connections with some armed opposition groups. And there is a common understanding among them not to harm the civilians and not to attack any infrastructure establishments, or it's only legal to use arms to defend lives and civilians.
Now, from the very beginning, you've been strongly against international intervention into Syrian affairs. And one can argue that what we have now in Syria is a form of covert military intervention, because you have flow of arms going through your borders. Even you admit that there are some foreign nationals fighting the Syrian army in the north. Which do you think is more damaging, the open Libyan-style military intervention, or covert but still lasting intervention in the form of supplying arms?
The Libyan style is completely imaginary when you try to apply it in Syria. It's impossible. All the circumstances are different. The Syrian, the regional, and the international circumstances. What happened in Libya cannot be repeated in Syria. That is number one. Number two, yes, day after day, the struggle and the fight in Syria is becoming some kind of a proxy war. Now, day after day, the regime, number one, and the armed group in the opposition are becoming more and more hostages in the hands of their allies. They are losing their independent decision, and they cannot apply what they think or believe in, because they need support in arms, in ammunition, financial, etc., etc., etc.
Freedom can mean very different things to many different people, and the footage that we often get from the north of the fighters shouting Allah Akbar, there are also reports that they are fighting for the creation of their Islamic State. And my question to you is there any danger that in search for greater political freedoms, Syria may lose other forms of freedom, for example, social, religious, gender freedom, and all those other aspects of dignity and freedom?
Simply, very frankly, yes, there is a possibility now, and it was not created just now, it accumulated through days, that the Syrians may lose some of the freedoms that they are used to. It's a possibility. But there are other possibilities as well. That's why we say now you cannot preserve your right by just being afraid or worried. You must be active. We believe that the majority of the Syrians would not choose any kind of religious state.
I sometimes get an impression that here in Syria, the hatred for the opponent within some people is stronger than the love for their own country, and they would rather be right than merciful to people around them. How can you, in the current circumstances and given your experience, how can you foster the spirit of reconciliation given how far this situation has gone already?
Among some Syrians, not the majority of the Syrians. Among the active Syrians now, the majority is not active yet. And those can have a thought from time to time, what on earth is going on? How are we doing that? Yes, they are questioning themselves. But I believe this is a reaction which will come to an end sooner or later, because it's not the real culture or the real soul of the Syrian history or the Syrian people.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.